If you're watching this video, you probably can understand most, if not everything that I'm saying, and you probably know English at a useful level. However, I'm willing to bet that your accent in English still has a lot of room for improvement to speak more clearly. Maybe you find yourself constantly needing to repeat yourself when you communicate with native English speakers, or maybe your messages just don't deliver the way that you ideally would want them to deliver. You might even believe that a native like English accent is just reserved for people who were born and raised in English speaking regions. Well, as a native English speaker who's helped many people with their English and their accents, I can tell you that that certainly is not the case. If you've already tried imitating native English speakers and you're still trying to improve those sounds that are very difficult for you to pronounce based on what your native language is, then I'm going to show you the exact step-by-step system that I've used to help many other English learners acquire a North American accent. And I'll show you that with the right approach, and if you use methods that have actually been proven to work, then you can absolutely transform the way that you sound just like they did. So, if you're a returning viewer of this channel, you probably know that I am bilingual. If you're new to this channel, then once upon a time, I had to learn the French language. So, when I was learning French, my accent was a little bit distinct. I was still understandable by most, but my accent was pretty distinct. Now, just keep in mind for the rest of this video, having an accent in English or in any language is not necessarily a bad thing. But if your accent tends to be unclear, that is a really big problem and it can cause confusion with native speakers and it can cause them to have you repeat yourself several times. I remember situations where I literally tried repeating myself more than 3 times and the native speakers still could not understand what I was saying. After about the 10th or the 11th time, they finally figured it out. But it was just a very awkward interaction. And honestly, it just made navigating my way through the landscape with another language much more difficult than it needed to be. So, ideally, your goal should be to be able to communicate in English effortlessly. But that will be difficult for you to do with other native English speakers if you have a very heavy or a very strong accent that is not necessarily clear. So, of course, these anecdotal experiences that I had were wake up calls, and I realized that something needed to change. I really needed to go beyond just general speaking practice and actually figure out intonation and delivery of what I was saying. And that's when I forced myself to learn how to actually improve my accent using methods that have actually been proven to work, which took me a very long time to figure out. But I'm going to give it to you in a quick and easy way in this video so you don't have to go through years of pain like I did. The system to improve your English accent consists of 3 pretty simple principles. So the first one is breaking down the actual sounds of English. The second involves physically training your mouth to speak English, which is also closely tied to sound linking, which we'll dive into pretty soon. And then the third is the actual application of these sounds with context. Now, keep in mind to apply all 3 of these principles, it will require an active effort and not really a passive one. Now, for the first principle, when it comes to breaking down the sounds of English, you want to learn how to actually hear the difference between words that are very similar to one another. Common examples could be bat versus bad or ship versus sheep. Minimal pairs are a very key thing to learn and pay attention to. And this is obviously going to be much easier for some people if you speak a language that's closer to English versus a language that is very distant from English. For example, these sounds might be easier for a Spanish speaker to make versus a French speaker, or they might be easier for a Russian speaker than versus for a Japanese speaker. But nonetheless, as you observe English media, which is just watching English videos with subtitles, you will clearly see the context by which certain words are delivered and then the pronunciation for how they're actually executed. So I wouldn't go as far as to say that you should use phonetic charts in order to learn the pronunciation of English, I would say that that is a little extreme and it's only really necessary if your language is just completely foreign to the English language. Something such as Mandarin Chinese, Cantonese, Vietnamese, maybe Japanese, and languages among the sort. It could be useful, but just normal observation of English media with subtitles should be enough for you if your language is somewhat similar to the English language. And once you can identify the minimal pairs, a very easy way to actually practice pronouncing them is just by using the shadowing technique. Now, there are many variations of using the shadowing technique to practice these minimal pairs once you identify them. However, simply put, you can just watch a native English speaker on a video or online pronouncing a word, and then you can record yourself trying to pronounce the same word. You will see very quickly how close you are or how far off you are on the pronunciation. If you're at one of the intermediate levels of English, which you probably are if you can understand me in this video, then this should be more than sufficient for practicing your pronunciation and identification of minimal pairs. And this is closely related with the second principle, which is physically training your mouth, which is closely related with sound linking. Now, of course, because English is not your first language, your mouth is not going to be used to the shapes that the mouth makes for a native English speaker like myself. But the good part is you can simply train it to be that way. It's not something that is permanent. The way you train your mouth, again, is going to depend on what your native language is. For example, it might be easier for you to pronounce the sound TH if your first language is Russian versus if your first language is French. But the easiest way to physically train your mouth is just by using the shadowing technique, which is just repeating after a native English speaker says something as you're watching a video, whether it's a short form video or a long form video. Again, there are different variations of using the shadowing technique, but specifically to train your mouth, I would recommend using the variation where you just repeat after the native English speaker as you're watching a video of them speaking. This will be incredibly unnatural at first, but once you get enough repetitions of doing it over and over and over and over and over again, it will become second nature and you will be able to actually pronounce words like a native English speaker. As difficult as that might be to believe if you are struggling with this right now. And as you are observing English media and then applying it, you are very quickly going to pick up on how sound linking works in the English language. In simple terms, in the English language, when you're using sound linking, you're basically combining 10 different words all into one word, or a few different words all into one word. For example, instead of properly pronouncing every single word like I am in this video because I want to speak clearly, you would say something in a much more quick and less formal way. So instead of saying, I'm going to go to the grocery store today, I would say, I'm going to go to the grocery store today. You see the difference. This is going to take some experience. This is going to take a bit of patience if you're not used to listening to English at that speed and the way I just said that. But it absolutely will wash over if you use the shadowing technique and if you use it consistently. Just like I said that sentence, I'm going to go to the grocery store later today versus I'm going to go to the grocery store later today. It's like you're learning how to play an instrument for the first time or shoot a basketball for the very first time. It's going to be incredibly unnatural at first. You're going to feel like you suck at it at first, which is normal. And you probably do, but that's completely normal. And then after you've done it so many times over and over again, you could probably understand it and pick it up with your eyes closed. You can do it effortlessly once you've done it enough times. And this leads to the third principle, which is application with context. So you don't want to just practice isolated sounds. Like, for example, if you need to practice pronouncing the TH sound or just pronouncing the letter H for those of you who speak French. But you want to actually be able to use them in real speech. in real situations with context that are applicable to your specific lifestyle. You also really want to pay close attention to intonation and how we deliver our messages in English. For example, I'm speaking in a pretty neutral way in this video, but if I was very angry or if I was very sad, I would be speaking in a different tone. You should pick that up. That is common sense to a certain extent, but depending on what your native language is, it might not be that obvious. In order to improve this, the methods remain the same. Simply observe the English media, practice repeating it using the shadowing technique. But when you're practicing repeating it, don't just practice repeating it in your neutral voice. Practice repeating it with the same emotion, with the same delivery, and specifically with the same intonation and rhythm as the English speaker that you're listening to. And this means that the media that you're using to practice with should be a native English speaker whose voice you want to emulate to some extent. If you want to learn how to speak with a British accent, of course, consume British media. If you want to learn English with an American accent, of course, consume American or North American content in English. So, to recap the three simple principles: number one, break down the sounds of English. Step two, physically train your mouth. And step three, apply these skills of listening and speaking with proper context that involves intonation and rhythm. If you follow this blueprint, you will sound more natural and speak with more confidence over time. And this will happen for you faster, just depending on how much time you spend. If you spend a lot of time, this can happen to you in the span of 3 to 6 months. If you spend a little bit of time, this could take you around a year. But don't let anyone tell you that you can't change your accent or you can't fix or improve your accent in the English language, because it is absolutely achievable. I've seen many people achieve it, and you absolutely can too if you apply these three principles. Now, if you got any value from this video at all, be sure to like the video, as it will help the YouTube algorithm spread the message to other people who are also trying to improve their English skills. Also, leave a comment down below letting me know where you're from and what your native language is. And if you have any questions as well, I'll be happy to answer them. And if you want more clarity, I will be releasing very soon a full free training on how to become fluent in English to the advanced levels, no matter where you are in the world and what your current level is. So be sure to check that out. I will leave a link somewhere in the pinned comment or the description below. And if you want more insight on the key principles that will take you from the intermediate levels of English up to the advanced levels of English, be sure to watch the next video on the screen.